everybody. Today we're going to focus on lesson 4.3, the impact of war on our society. And so you're going to describe how the war impacted different members of the society. So today we're going to take a look at the Civil War and how did it impact women, how did it impact African Americans, and how did it impact the soldiers who actually fought during the war. So we're going to start by talking about African Americans in the war. And over here to the right, you will see two regiments, or the African American regiment that fought during the Civil War. And that's because in 1862, Congress allowed black men to become Union soldiers. But it's important to know a few things. That yes, they became soldiers, however, they were definitely paid less than white soldiers, even if they did the same job. And if they were captured by the South, they typically were taken back into slavery or killed. And so because of this, they typically had the highest death rate amongst any other soldier. And there was approximately 186,000 African Americans who served for the Union Army. So next we're going to talk a little bit about what it was like to be a soldier in the North, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the South. So this was a letter written by a soldier by the name of Louis Bissell, and he wrote this in April 3rd of 1863. And this just kind of shows a little bit about what his life was like. He's writing to his mother. Dear Mother, I received your very kind and motherly letter, and I was very glad to hear from you. I take much pleasure in reading your letters. I am as well as ever, so they say they're doing pretty well. Do not have much to do now since furloughs have come into play. I wished to know what was in the barrel sent from Chestnut Hill. There was butter. You wished to know what was in the barrel sent from Chestnut Hill. There was butter, vinegar, pickles, ham, dried apples, sausage, and some other things I do not remember. It was the best packed barrel I have seen. There was quite a large box of butter, of which there is some left. Our rations are good. They consist of fresh meat, salt horse, rice, soft bread, potatoes, pork, coffee, sugar, salt, and vinegar. We have plenty to eat and not much to do but drill. Have to be on guard about once a week. So here he's saying that they are good. They have plenty of food. They have supplies. And this wasn't necessarily the case for every single Union soldier. There were definitely soldiers that weren't paid very well and that struggled. But overall, the Northern soldiers were better off than the Southern soldiers. And remember, the North was able to pay for the war with taxes and borrowing money. So they had more supplies and more money than the South did. Now, in contrast, let's look at the life of a common soldier for the South. This is from the life of Johnny Reb. And I actually took the second page, but it was from the same year. Here, Johnny Reb is saying, I have not a single vessel to cook one morsel of bread for my cooking. Has to be done as we can beg the citizens to do it. Send me skillets, ovens, pots, or anything that will bake bread or fry meat. I cannot fight anymore until I get something to cook in. But Rebs elsewhere were becoming hardened to scarcity of utensils. Skillets, plates, and corn graters were made from halves of captured canteens. The practice of broiling beef over the fire on sharpened sticks was so universally followed as to become standard. Broadcloth, shirt tails, boards, stumps, chips of wood, or any other surface that was available. We have no utensils to eat with. We have but one knife, i.e. case knife, in our mess. No plate nor fork, no spoon. So they talk about having some food, but no utensils. Remember, the South did not have factories. So they couldn't produce war goods. So they could not produce goods. And so that made life a lot more difficult for the Southern soldiers. Also, there was no railroad to transport goods. So transportation became very, very difficult. Also, remember, the majority of the war was fought in the South, right? So that also complicated matters for trying to transport goods from one place to another. So while the men were off fighting, the women were really left to kind of tend to and take care of a lot of the things on the farms and the businesses because there was nobody else left to do it. However, women were obviously paid less than men for doing the same jobs. And one thing to kind of keep note about the women is that they managed with scarce resources. Meaning, even in the North, women couldn't always have access to everything that they were used to because a lot of those goods were going to the war. And so they really kind of figured out how to make things work without having everything that they typically would have. So overall, and over here to the right, we have a woman by the name of Rose O'Neal Greenhow. She was a Confederate spy. This is a picture of her and her daughter in jail. I believe they were in Washington, D.C. in this picture. But she was a famous Southern spy for the Confederacy. So just to kind of sum up a little bit about how the war impacted individuals. So African Americans were able to fight within the war for the Union. However, they were typically paid less. They also had a higher death rate than any other group. There was a large difference between fighting for the North versus fighting for the South as far as the resources that you were provided as a soldier. And women also really had to kind of step in and began running the farms and the businesses. Even though they were paid less, they were still able to manage with very scarce resources.